Welcome, this is the next video in the Makecode and Math series. We're going to start a new project. We are going to call it Factor Fire. Inside of this project we'll be learning a little bit about factors and using how to figure out if a number is a factor of another one or not, and also we'll be learning about functions and some coding as well. So we're going to start off with the onStart block, so anything inside of here will run onStart. And inside of scene, the scene tab, the gray one, I'm going to grab set my background image to. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go to the gallery and I'm going to grab this forest scene right here. I think we're going to have a little campfire in the forest, not a forest fire though. And next up we're going to go into sprites and we're going to set my sprite to, and we're going to change the name of this sprite to be wood. This is going to be the wood that we're going to light on fire, and then we're going to click on this little gray box here, which will allow us to draw some wood. Right now this is 16 pixels by 16 pixels. I can tell because I'm looking down in the bottom left hand corner, it says 16 by 16. I want to change this to 32 by 32. We're going to have some big pieces of wood that we're going to light on fire when we see the factors. Okay, I'm going to start with brown. I'm going to start with the medium size. Oh, that's pretty big. Okay, I'll give it a try. I'll draw some wood here. This is my fire. Sometimes when I'm building a fire, I like to use this TP method. I'm going to use the smaller one as well to draw some like smaller sticks here, part of the fire. Alright, there's some wood for our fire. I like it. I'm going to grab the black one just to outline some of it. Alright, it's not perfect, but I kind of like how that looks. So I am done drawing my wood. When I'm all done, I'm going to click the green button in the bottom right hand corner, done. And you can see my wood should appear on the screen, but it's in the middle of the screen. I kind of want it down on the ground, so I'm going to move it. I'm going to click on the sprites tab. I'm going to go to set my sprite position. And if you click on one of those numbers right there, it sets up the whole screen here, and you can move the coordinates around, the X and Y coordinates, to where you want it on the screen. I think we want it maybe around there, 75 and 89, 75X and 89. And I'm getting a little exclamation mark. This is a good learning experience for us. So up here I set the sprite name to be wood, but here I say set my sprite position to. So this should have the same name as this one. So this should say set wood position to. So let me do that. So if you click on this little arrow here, this little drop down, you can change that to wood. The exclamation mark should go away, and our wood should move down onto the ground. I think I want to move it slightly higher. 89, maybe 87. Okay, I like how that looks. And next up, I'm going to create another sprite. This sprite is going to be called main number. So again, I go into sprites, I say set my sprite to. I rename it. I'm going to call this main number. And I click on this gray box right here. I click on the black pen, and I'm going to write the number 32. 32 is going to be our main number. And then we're going to look for factors of 32. Alright, that's my 3. See if I can draw my 2. Alright, once you've drawn your numbers, you can click done in the bottom right hand corner. And again, our sprite's going to appear on the middle, but we're going to move it down, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say click on sprites, click on set my sprite position to. This time I'll remember to change it to be main number, so we don't get that error. And then I'm going to move this right down to the bottom middle of the screen, maybe 107 Y coordinate, maybe even lower, 110. No, I don't love it. I'm gonna move this one over a little bit. I think 110 is the right distance down, but I don't like how it's bumping into this other sprite. Okay, what are the numbers gonna be? The numbers up here need to be a little bit higher. Okay, so my wood I set at 78.85, and my main number I set at 80 and 110. Alright, next we're going to create a variable. Remember, a variable is just a box where we can store some information. We're going to set it to be num short for number, and I'm going to set num to be 32. So my main number sprite, which appears on the screen for the user, I created a variable with that same value, so I can do some math with that and see if we're getting a factor of it. Next up, I'm going to create a function. So you can think of a function as a series of commands. They'll run over and over again whenever you call them, whenever you say their name. So I'm going to go into advanced, and I'm going to make a function. This function will be called...
I'm back in the chair.
Alright, cool.
Thank you, man.
No problem. Have a good one.
Let's do it.
This function will be called create factor. Actually, they're not always going to be factors. Maybe create number, and I'll put it down below here. Now, whatever we put inside of here will run whenever we call it, but we haven't called it yet. So let's go back into this function tab, and let's call create number. We'll call it right at the end of the onStart block. So when the game starts, all of this code will run, and then finally we'll call create number, and whatever is in here will run. So inside of here, we're going to make another variable. And this will be called factor number. And I'm going to set factor number to be, I'm going to go into math. I'm going to pick a random, 0 to 10. I'm just going to change it 1 to 10. So it's going to be a number between 1 and 10. Next up, I am going to change that factor number to be text, and I think you'll see why in a little bit. So I'm going to create a variable. It's going to be called factor number text. And I'm going to set factor number text to, I'm going to go into my advanced functions, and I'm going to look for this yellow tab that says text. I'm going to click on that one, and I am going to grab the block that will convert a number to text. So I'm going to convert our factor number that we created on the line above, and I'm going to convert it to text and store it in factor number text. So inside of here, inside of my variables tab, I'm going to grab factor number. I'm going to put it in this block right here. So once again, we created a factor number 1 through 10. Next up, we're creating factor number text, and we're setting it to our factor number but converted to text. Why are we doing that? Well, we're doing that because we want to create a text sprite. And in order to create a text sprite, we actually need to add an extension. So I'm going to ask everyone to click on this extensions tab right here, and we're going to search text. And we're going to select this one right here, the arcade text. And once you click on that, you'll get a new tab right here that says text sprite. Alright, now that we've added the extension, we'll see text sprite appears here. And we're going to create a text sprite. So you click on set text sprite to. And we're going to set our text sprite to be our factor number text. This is why we changed our factor number to be text. So let's see, I'm going into variables, and I say factor number text. And I'm going to change that into a text sprite. And it will appear there. Do you see that white 6 in the middle of the screen? That was our random number 1 through 10. Well, what I want to do is I want to change that color to be black. I think it will show up a little bit better. And I want to move it. So we're going to go back into sprites. We're going to say set my sprite position to. We're going to change my sprite to be text sprite. We're going to change the position X to be 0 and maybe Y to be 6. So it'll appear up on the left-hand side of the screen. We are going to give it a little bit of velocity. So we're going to go up into my sprites, and we're going to say set my sprite velocity to. And we're going to set Vy to be 0, and we're going to leave Vx as 50, and we're going to change my sprite to be text sprite. And we should see our text sprite move across the screen, which it does, and then pop, it goes off the screen. So we want, once it goes off the screen, we actually want to create another number, so we consistently have numbers going across the screen. Alright, the numbers will go off the screen and they don't reappear, so I'm going to want to go into this loops tab, grab a forever loop. Inside of that forever loop, I'm going to put an if statement. Inside of that if statement, I'm going to grab this less than sign, so I'm going to say 0 is less than 0, and I'm going to change that to be greater than, so now it says 0 is greater than 0. And what I want to check for is I want to check for if the value, the x value of that text sprite is greater than 160, that means it will be off the screen. And if it's off the screen, I want to recreate a new one. So I'm going to put in my sprite x, and I'm going to change my sprite to be text sprite, because that's the sprite that's traveling across the screen. And if it's greater than 160, then I am going to call create number again. So I'm going to go down into my advanced features, open up functions, grab call create number, and put that in that if statement. So that if that number flies off the screen, I'll just create another one. And when that one goes off the screen, I'll create another one. So it always looks like a different number is floating across the screen. The next block of text I'm going to do is an input, and that's going to be inside of controller. So inside of controller, I'm going to say on A button pressed. And this is where we're going to do a little math. If you'd like to pause the video for a little bit, what I want to do is I want to check to see if these numbers flying across the top of the screen are going to be a factor of 32. So if you think you know how to do that, pause the screen and maybe add some blocks and see if you can figure that out. Alright, I hope you paused the screen for a little bit and tried to figure it out. I'm going to keep going with the tutorial. I'm going to add an if statement because I want to check to see a certain value. And inside of there, I'm going to do 0 is equal to 0. Then I'm going to go into my math blocks, this purple tab here. Inside there, I'm going to grab remainder of, and I'm going to put that in the first part. Now we have two numbers. One is the main number, this set num to 32. And I'm going to grab that variable first. So going into variables, grabbing that num. And the other number that I want to divide by is this factor number here. So again, I'm going to go into variables, grab the factor number. I'm going to divide num by factor number, and if it is equal to 0, that means it is a factor. So what I want to happen is I want the fire to light up, and I want to get some points. So first I'll do some points. I'll go into info, and I'll say change score by 1. And then I will go into sprites, and I will look for my sprite start spray effect. And I'm going to put that right above change my score. I'm going to change my sprite to be our pile of wood. Do you remember this pile of wood we made in the beginning? We're going to light it on fire. We're going to change start spray effect to fire effect. And we're going to change 500 milliseconds to maybe be 150. So if one of these numbers flies across is a factor of 32, we should be able to press the A button, and we should be able to light the fire. Just like that. So that part is working. But if we get the factor wrong, I want to take away a point. So I'm going to go to this if statement here, and I'm going to click the plus sign on the bottom of it, and that's going to create this else sign. So if it's not a factor, I'm going to duplicate this change score by 1 block, and I duplicate it by doing a right click, say duplicate. I'm going to put it in the else, but instead of adding 1, I'm going to subtract 1. So I take 1 away from their score. So if it is a factor and you press A, you should get points, and if it isn't a factor, you should lose points. So that seems like it is working. Now we have to figure out a way to end the game. So I am going to go into info, and on score 30, this is going to be a short game, so as soon as you can get to 30 points, the game is going to end. And I'm going to go into info, and I'm going to say set score to, and I'm going to set the score to, I'm going to go into the game tab, and I'm going to say time start since milliseconds. I'm going to go into the game tab again, and I'm going to say game over win, and I'm going to go into the game tab again, and I'm going to grab use high score as best score, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that to low score. So what that means is when the player reaches 30 points, we're going to set the score to however long it took them to complete that, but it's going to be in milliseconds. We're going to use the lowest score as the best score, so who can figure out the factors the quickest is going to win, and then the game's going to end. So I know 1 is a factor. I'm going to click on that one. 4 is a factor. Can I get to 30? Not quite. 5 is not a factor, so I'm not going to press A. 2 is a factor. So I was able to get to 30 points in about 27,000 milliseconds. So that is how that game is working. I hope you learned a little bit about functions and got to practice some of the math behind factors. Thanks a lot for watching.